Good evening, everyone. Is this good? Okay. Good evening. My name is Rachalea. I'm Rabbi Shmuley's daughter. I want to welcome all of you to the World Values Network Torah dedication in honor of two very special and important women. It's very fitting that I'm the MC tonight. I'm your MC tonight because I'm a very big female advocate, and I love women. And we are remembering and celebrating two very special women who were taken from us too early. One of those women is my grandmother. I just said I'm Shmuley's daughter. My grandmother, Eleanor Esther Elka Paul, who was the center of our lives. Today was her first yard site. It was a very hard day for our family. My aunt is also here somewhere. It's a hard day for all of us. We're remembering her and celebrating her life and her memory today. And the second woman that we're remembering and celebrating today is a woman that most of us, probably all of us, besides her parents, have not met. But we probably all feel that we know her and love her, and that is Shani Louk, who was savagely murdered by Hamas on October 7th. So welcome. I want to welcome the panelists to the stage. Panelists, wherever you are, come to the stage, please. My father, Bobby Kennedy, Nissim and Ricarda Louk, you can come to the stage. And welcome, everyone. Thank you all for coming. So while the panelists are coming up, I'm going to ask you please to rise and stand for the Hatikva and the national anthem. National anthem first. So we're about to watch a very hard video, a very tragic video. We've probably all seen it. But we must bear witness to what happened to Shani Louk and what happened to our people on October 7th. And now for the evening's opening remarks, I'd like to invite Lady Anya Gillenson to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Louk. Good evening, Rabbi Shmuley. The dream of Israel had lived within me since I was a little girl growing up in the Soviet Union, and it was given to me by my father, who was taken from me in the most brutal way when I was 13 years old. When I was 6, he revealed to me that I was not Russian at all, but Jewish. And with those words, he gave me the Star of David, which I wear to this day without ever taking it off. With those words, he told me of Israel and of its unmatched connection to Jewish fate. He told me that if ever anyone will have anything objectionable to say to me about my Jewishness, he, my peaceful father, a physician, a healer, gives me his personal permission to punch that person in the mouth. I grew up in the Soviet Union, where being Jewish was an anathema, where it was safer to be dead than to be Jewish, where, to paraphrase Natan Sharansky, what most Jews knew about being Jewish or Jewishness was anti-Semitism. The country which proclaimed religion a taboo, an opium of the masses, which loved to pride itself in its diverse layer of nationalities, ethnicities, and cultures, with one exception only, when it concerned the Jews, although on the outside it pretended to include them into its circle of egalitarian utopia. In reality, nothing really changed for the Jews since the days when they lived under the Tsars. The hatred called anti-Semitism simply became more sophisticated. To it was added anti-Zionism once the State of Israel was established. To the Soviet administration, as well as to an average non-Jewish Soviet citizen, words Jews and Israel represented an imagery of a typical bourgeois oppressor, a bespectacled intellectual, a threat, an enemy with horns, which had to be demolished. This is exactly the hatred I observe today on campuses and streets of seemingly democratic and tolerant America and Western Europe, the world I thirsted for when I lived behind the impermeable veil of Soviet hypocrisy. In reference to Holocaust, and since the tragedy of October 7th, my friend Rabbi Shmuley and so many broken-hearted parents and children asked the most tormented question: why God had let this happen? Aren't we the chosen people? Or did you, Hashem, in all your infinite wisdom, choose us for the sole purposes of suffering so as to make us wiser than others? Is that your game, you, O cruel God? A while back, I too asked this same question in relation to my personal sorrow. Why did you take my father away from me? And then, years later, my beautiful younger sister. Why did you break my mother's heart? Why the shadow of grief must follow me wherever I go, whispering sadness into my ears, even in the greatest moments of happiness? And to these questions, most likely, Jews, even the most devout ones, will hear nothing but silence in response. And I'm no exception. So what do we do when we hear silence from our God? Do we defy him? Do we get angry with him? Do we continue to question him, or do we renounce him? And I don't know. Of course, as Jews, we may do as we please. We are free to ask more questions. We wander around. We get lost in our thoughts. Judaism is all about freedom of choice and freedom of interpretation. We are allowed to do all that. But what we're not allowed to do is to give up on two things: to give up on life and to give up on fighting, if fighting is necessary to preserve that very life. Historically, warfare has never been the weapon of our choice, but whenever throughout our tortured history we were pushed by the mob to the brink of our extinction, we became great warriors, not murderers, but warriors defending our people, our faith, and our land. Our people are builders, pioneers, and mavericks, not destroyers. No matter how fate gambled with our lives, we Jews, no matter where we were in the world we found ourselves, we learned to start over with nothing but hope. We were always able to recover, succeed, create, help others, and never ever lose that hope again. And today, we find ourselves at the crossroads of our fate, yet again. But where are our leaders? There are no more Davids, no more Herzls, no more Ben-Gurions, and no more Golda Meirs of today to speak as a single Jewish voice on behalf of all Jews. There are many reasons for that, and therefore our task is ever more challenging. Today we're soldiers without leaders. We must push ourselves to fight our enemies who have weaponized themselves to fight us with every imaginable tool. As I have mentioned once before, the world is quite comfortable with the idea of dead Jews. It has no problem lamenting them, feeling sorry for them. It loves victims. It fears tyrants. But more than anything, it deplores successful Jews. And more than anything, the world despises our nation, which time and time again dares to rise out of ashes and fight back and live again. Of course, on October 7th, the world gasped in horror as it tried to grasp the monstrosities committed by Hamas terrorists. Yet, when a few days later, Israel began its initial response, when it demonstrated its ability to fight back and its legitimate right to self-defense, the world was appalled. Why, I ask, is this society so uncomfortable at the sight of a Jew who is not ready to succumb to fear, who fights back to defend his home, his women, his children, his elderly, his future, who wants to avenge for what was taken so mercilessly from him for the millionth time? Why our global society would rather shed crocodile's tears for murdered, torched Jewish children and raped, tortured women and young girls when they see the Jewish nation exhibit its strength on the battlefield, rather than see the Jewish nation exhibit the strength on the battlefield in the justified for the Jewish existence. There is so much talk about the Israeli PR not being good enough. Israel is not doing a good enough job justifying the war it has to fight after it had suffered the worst attack since 1948. What? PR is the game for fakes and pretenders. PR is for those who are in the game of selling and business dealing, while Israel is not. I can hear cynics arguing with me in the background. Israel has always been a real country with real problems, with real people, and clear vision for what is right for its existence. Does it really need to sell its war to the world that hates it anyway? How many times do the images and the facts of October 7th massacre must circulate the world to prove for our self-righteous community, to our self-righteous community, that what Israel is doing right now is just and fair? No matter what sort of intricate and sophisticated PR campaigns Israel puts on for the world, it will never be satisfactory enough for those who view us through the lens of incurable ancient hatred. Never. Don't you get it? We're not liked because we're not the underdogs. We are not victims, even when the worst of genocides and pogroms is committed upon our nation. That is why it is only upon us, every Jew in Israel, in America, upon every Jewish child and adolescent and adult in every country in the world to fight, be it in combat or with our voice, our behavior, to never stop educating our children and each other about our identity by never being afraid of it, God forbid, ashamed of who we are. Even in the Soviet Russia, where the very mention of Israel, of Jewish identity, could lead to your demise, Soviet Jews preserved themselves by sticking together. Despite and in spite of fear, people like my grandparents celebrated Jewish holidays quietly, but they did so. Like my grandparents, they spoke Yiddish, and for the most part, they did not marry outside faith. This was done without much ado, instinctively, out of need to protect one another, out of desperate desire to survive. Back then, in the Soviet days, unfortunately, very few Soviet Jews dreamt about thriving, yet they woke up every morning full of hope for their children, to inspire in them thirst for knowledge, so that one day they could thrive. They could become the future Yuri Brins, Maxim Levchins, Igor Levits, Yevgeny Kisins, Maxim Vengerovs, and so many other renowned mathematicians, doctors, lawyers, entrepreneurs, artists, philanthropists, major public figures who are now today responsible for making this world a better place. So go ahead, be Jewish, create Jewish families, be better, stay Jewish, wear your kippas, go to shuls, marry, and teach your children your religion and your traditions. This is the only PR I am aware of. Today, while Israel is fighting for our survival and our Jewish freedom, our people are our only PR, and these soldiers need to know that they're not fighting for Jews without a voice. We're not a cult of death. We have always existed through the paradigm of life. And despite everything that happened and still happening to us, no matter how many more farcical cases they bring against us with their kangaroo court proceedings, in spite of the tears shed by parents over the bodies of their murdered children, life alone shall be our sword, our shield, and the answer to our most tortured questions. Thank you.
Anya, I gotta say, I have to give you a standing ovation for that speech. Anya is the First Lady of Carnegie Hall. She's here with her husband, Sir Clive, who runs Carnegie Hall. Anya, that was as ferocious a statement of magnificent Jewish pride as I, as a rabbi of 33 years, have ever heard. Thank you very much.
Anya, that was spectacular, really. I would like to now invite to the stage Inspector Richard Taylor.
Thank you. I learned a lot of things here tonight. One thing I learned: never speak after Anya. That was extraordinarily meaningful and deep and powerful. Thank you. What do you say? Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, your leadership. I know, to your credit, how you brought everyone here together tonight, how you brought the Louk family, who I spoke to earlier, very, very meaningful. Of course, to the Kennedy family, thank you for being here. Mr. Louk explained that he is a volunteer in the Israeli police force, in the motorcycle unit. He gets it. Him and his wife. There are no words. The mayor, we all heard Mayor Eric Adams say right in the shadow of the United Nations on October 10th, he said, we are not all right. When we have a horrific terrorist attack, worst attack that we've ever seen in our lifetime, we have the Louk family, their daughter, brutally murdered, we are not all right. When we have hostages still being held, we are not all right. As the mayor says that we need peace in the Middle East, and that peace starts with the release of the hostages. When you see just the pain, as a police department, as a city, of course we're there for our fellow person, humanity. Of course we're there to provide police protection. It's not just the police department's job to keep people safe, but it's also equally our job to make sure people feel safe, whether that includes deployment at houses of worship, whether that includes deployment at yeshivas, whether that includes deployment at venues such as this here tonight, which we're here for you, Rabbi Shmuley. The police department stands as a strong partner to the Jewish community, all communities in the city. We stand as a strong partner because we understand that the fabric of our city can only be torn away by the discord that we see in the streets at times. Of course, we protect the Constitution. We protect the right to freedom of speech. We protect the rights of people to express themselves. However, as the mayor says, hate speech is not welcome in New York City. Hate is not welcome in New York City. And just something powerful for me, I'm very fortunate to hold a position that I hold in the police department. Tremendous responsibility given to me by the mayor, given to me by the police commissioner, Edward Caban, given to me by the chief of department, Jeff Madry, given to me by the deputy commissioner of community affairs, Mark Stewart. It just shows that the leadership of the city, the leadership of the police department understands the dangers of anti-Semitism. It understands what is at risk here. And everyone here, to everyone gathered tonight, this beautiful, beautiful, and deeply meaningful venue, and everyone in the city should absolutely, absolutely know that as a city, as a police department, we stand with you. Myself personally, every member of the police department understands that there's fear, and we're here for you. We're here to do the best we can for you. We're visible, whether it's on patrol, the police cars that you see will be there by the synagogues, will be there by the yeshivas, will be there entrenched in the community, not because we know that we have to, because we want to. We want to be there. That's why we became cops. That's why we became police officers. It's to serve, it's to keep people safe, and it's my honor here to join everyone to express, I know, what everyone feels in their hearts here tonight. Thank you so much.
Richie isn't he's not only one of the highest ranking officers in the entire NYPD, which is almost as large as the Israeli army, but he's the highest ranking Orthodox Jew in the history of the NYPD, so we're very proud of him.
Okay. It's so cool to see a police officer or an inspector in a yarmulke and a kippah. That's really amazing. Jewish pride. We love that. Thank you. Okay, before we start this very important conversation, right before we start, we're going to watch a video of my grandmother, Eleanor Esther Elka Paul, who we love so much. To know her was to love her. It's such a shame if you didn't know her. She was just, she was the best. So we're going to watch a video of her, and then we're going to start.
Born on the 12th of Cheshvan, 5702, corresponding to the Gregorian date of October 23, 1942, Eleanor Esther Paul came into the world at the height of World War II and the Holocaust. In 1942, some 10,000 Jews were murdered at Treblinka every day. Eleanor was saved from Hitler's ovens by her father's decision 35 years earlier to depart Łomża in Poland and come to the United States. A passionate and proud Jewish woman to her core, Eleanor was also deeply American, with a lifelong Brooklyn accent, and someone who literally lived at each point of the American triangle of New York, Los Angeles, and Miami. Eleanor had 5 children, including twins, in just 3.5 years, and with little finances, she almost never had any household help. As a single mother, she worked 2 daily jobs to provide for her children. She was a bank teller during the day, and she worked as a supermarket checkout clerk at night. She would rush home from the bank, make her children dinner, and then rush to her night job. She never complained as she cooked, washed, ironed, cleaned, chauffeured, and somehow got her children to school each morning and picked them up in the afternoon. Later in life, on a Shabbat night after all the guests had left, her son, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, sat alone with his mother and asked her how she had been so strong. Shmuley, she told him, "A person is like a rock, and as you experience hardships, you take your knocks. Pieces of the rock get chipped off, sometimes whole chunks, but you remain a rock. You're always strong." And that's what she was to her 5 children and 27 grandchildren. Her family's rock. She never stopped lecturing about how the only thing that is important in life is family and good deeds. And now, with the conclusion of the year of mourning for Eleanor Esther Elka Paul, her youngest child, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach, is honored to dedicate and consecrate a Torah in his mother's memory. Rabbi Shmuley has always credited his love of Judaism, his love of Israel, and his Jewish pride to the ferocious Jewish identity instilled within him by his parents. His father, Yoav, to whom he dedicated the Torah in May 2021, and now his mother, Eleanor Esther Elka Paul. Tonight will be the special celebration of dedication of a Torah that has taken 12 full months to be written in Israel, in the Holy Land, and will bear the name of Rabbi Shmuley's mother and the great leader of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, Mordecai Anelewitz, and the young victim of the October 7th massacre, 22-year-old Shani Nicole Louk.
All right, to begin the evening, I'd like to call to the microphone the man, the myth, the legend, Rabbi Shmuley.
Someone joked with me tonight that, are you trying to compete with Bobby Kennedy's voice? And I said to them, I happen to love Bobby Kennedy. I mean, when I say love, I mean love. I feel love for him. And I've been asked for months, how is Bobby Kennedy going to be the president of the United States if his voice isn't perfect? And I said, you never read your Bible, did you? Because we read in last week's Torah reading that Moses says to God says, Moses, take the Jews out of Egypt. And Moses says, my voice is not perfect. And God says, but that's what's going to make you the prophet. Because every time you speak, it's not going to be about your voice. It's going to be about your words, the content of your voice. So Bobby, it's actually good I can't speak a lot tonight because I don't want people to hear me. I want them to hear Bobby. I want them to hear Ricky. I want them to hear Nissim. I'm just facilitating a conversation. But the only thing I want to say to the three of you is thank you for showing me the honor of doing this event with me on the exact anniversary of my mother's passing, because it is a very painful day. Which leads me to you, Bobby. I stayed at your home this past summer in Cape Cod. I had an amazing time. Hung out with your incredible daughter, Kik, who's become a good friend. Met some of your other children. But the highlight was bumping into your mother. Your mother is an American icon. She's a legend. It's incredible that Bobby's 92-year-old mother is alive and well, thank God, living in Cape Cod. And it's rare that anyone sees her, but your sister had taken her out on the dock to enjoy the sun. And I was honored. She raised 11 children by herself in the wake of an unspeakable tragedy. She never seemed to complain. She was pregnant when your father was murdered on the 5th of June in 1968. And what we share in common is that although my father, thank God, lived, my mother raised 5 kids completely by herself. What feelings of gratitude do you have to Ethel Kennedy for how she raised you as a single mother? Do you have your microphone?
And thank you, Rabbi, and I do feel very blessed by God tonight, one, to be here with Nisi and Ricky, and to offer my condolences to them and my prayers to your whole family, and also to be here with Rabbi Shmuley and have his voice be worse than mine. When my first appearance at Carnegie Hall, and I was worried about being overshadowed by him, so I feel that this is a gift. But you know, there was a lot of chaos in my family after my dad was killed. I was 14 years old when my dad was killed. I was with him in Los Angeles, and my mom was faced with raising, you know, all these kids who were not, you know, we were a very chaotic group of kids. And I had a difficult relationship with my mom. My mom invented tough love, and I didn't get along when I was a kid, and I had a lot of sort of, I would say, acting out behavior. I ran away from home a lot. I hopped freight trains across the country, and but after I got sober, I actually took my mother out she goes swimming a half mile out in the ocean every day. And I wanted to have a conversation with her and apologize to her for a lot of, you know, for the pain that I'd caused her and for not being a better son to her. And I knew she wouldn't want to have that conversation with me because that's not the kind of conversation that she likes. She's very, she's a storyteller. She's very funny. But she doesn't like a lot of kind of introspection. And so I wanted to get her in a place where she couldn't leave the room. And so I followed her. I swam out in the middle of Nantucket Sound with her, and I had this conversation with her where I said to her, I cleaned up my side of the street, and I said, you know, I want to apologize for not being a better son to you, for increasing the burden on you after my dad died, for not being a better example to my brothers and sisters. And I came home from that, and my relationship after that with her changed dramatically. And I was able to see her in a different light because so many of us see our parents as people who owe us something. And that relationship, you know, we're never satisfied with. And particularly if you come from a big family like me, with 11 siblings, you know, you feel like there's reason to feel that you didn't get enough attention or other people did, and there's all that kind of baggage in the relationship, particularly if you have expectations, you know, as every child does from their parent. You have a certain set of beliefs about what your parent is supposed to do for you, and, you know, and there's an advantage on finding that they didn't give you enough because the child who feels aggrieved gets the most food. And, you know, so biologically we're hardwired to believe that our parents kind of let us down. And I had some of those feelings. And that day they all disappeared. And I was able to see my mother for the first time for the human being that she was, and this extraordinary human being. And the more that I realized that, the more grateful I was. I saw all the gifts that she had given me. I saw the piety. She had this combination of deep religious piety combined with irreverence and a skepticism toward the clergy. And it's an odd, paradoxical thing, but it was beautiful. She had this kind of rebellious spirit and at the same time deep faith. And she was an incredible raconteur and storyteller. She was a world-class athlete. She had the high jump record on horseback, but she could do every sport. She was one of the best amateur tennis players, women tennis players in the world, and won many, many tournaments. But she could do every sport, and it's one of the reasons my father fell in love with her. And she was competitive. She has extraordinary sense of humor to this day. She makes everybody laugh, and she's always laughing. And I saw all of these gifts that she had given me, the commitment, the passion that we had, that we were kind of raised with this idea that our lives would be consumed by great controversy, and that it would be a big privilege for us if we were able to play an effective role in public debates. And these were things that I didn't appreciate until I was able to change that paradigm and change the trajectory of our relationship and start seeing her as a human being rather than a parent. And, today I have an extraordinary relationship with her. And when I walk into the room, I can see her light up, that she's, so happy to see me. She actually likes my wife even better than she likes me. And so I'm just, I'm grateful to her. And look, I have 7 kids of my own. And I marvel every day about how my mother got us all to show up at dinner on time. We had to have a poem ready when we got to dinner. We said prayers before dinner. We said prayers after dinner. We said a rosary every day. We went to church every day. We were up in the morning. We had to have our fingernails cleaned, our hair brushed before we showed up at the dinner table. And we had to participate in group conversations. There was no such thing as talking to your neighbor when you're at the table. You had to talk to everybody, and everybody got a chance to talk. And when you played football, everybody had to be included. And she was able to enforce that discipline. And, I have all these kids now, and, if you don't have a good relationship with your children, just wait till they have children, and they'll start appreciating you. And, that made me, having my own kids made me even, more reverential toward what my mother accomplished as a single mom with 11 kids who were, raucous, rowdy, rebellious children, every one of them. And she was able to keep us all in line and give us that kind of discipline that has served me for the rest of my life.
Tangentially, whenever I listen to Bobby Kennedy, I always ask myself, is a man this honest capable of being president? I don't know. I don't know. He speaks with such authenticity, God Almighty. Ricky, your story is remarkable. It's hard enough that you buried a child that was murdered with such brutality, the likes of which the world has almost never seen before. And I don't mean to cause you pain by saying that this transcends the Jewish community. And forgive me for saying this. It might just be that Shani Louk was the most violated woman in world history. I'm not sure that in all of world history, 1 billion people watched a woman treated that way. It's not a Jewish issue. It's not an Israeli issue. That video was the most horrific video about a woman watched by more people probably than any woman in history. But you weren't born Jewish, and you didn't have to choose that. And that didn't have to be your daughter's fate. You were born German, and the German people and the Israeli people obviously had tension. But you chose to become a Jew. And this is God's reward to you, seemingly. That of your 4 children, your second oldest daughter paid that price. Not because she was German, not because she was European, perhaps not even because she was just a woman, but because she was a Jewish woman. Did you make the right decision becoming Jewish? Do you have regrets? Do you regret living in Israel? Do you think you could have done things differently?
No, I don't regret anything. I mean, if you would have asked me when I was 20 years in Germany...
You have to hold it just a bit closer.
That I will end up in Israel, that I would have 4 children in Israel, and that my daughter would have been killed. You know, it was unimaginable. I grew up as a Catholic, and I met my husband in Thailand, and we fell in love, and I ended up in Israel, and I loved it from the beginning. I really liked Israel from the beginning. I loved the weather, I loved the people, open people, very direct people, very rude people sometimes, but I loved it. And you know, it's my second home. I'm already 30 years in Israel, and it didn't came across my mind that I regret something. No, also now I feel really the most protected, the most best in Israel at the moment. I don't want to be somewhere else. I went to visit my family in Germany, and they said, come and stay here, and I said, no, I want to go back to Israel. The people, they hug me there, they understand me, they're in similar situations, and it helps us in our grief and what we experienced, and there's so many people suffering similar at the moment, unfortunately. So, yeah, answering your question, I don't regret it, and the people are really amazing now in Israel. It's unimaginable how people are close together now and helping us. And you know, the first month we didn't cook even. Like all the neighbors were bringing us food every day, food, the cooking, and coming and helping us with anything we need. And it's just amazing, the solidarity there. And yeah, and it's very difficult. It's a difficult situation, and the first few weeks were also so difficult because we really hoped that Shani was still alive, and we were fighting in interviews and any attention to get to free our daughter from there. And it's an unimaginable position for a parent to be in this situation, especially when you think they're still hostage there. I mean, we live not far away from Gaza, and we hear the bombs all the time. I mean, in the middle of the night, we hear them again and again, and we were imagining our daughter in Israel, in Gaza, and she's somewhere in a tunnel or who knows where. And it's just terrible to think about it. So really, the first 3 weeks were really torture. And I just feel with the families that are still in this situation, I can't imagine it that they're already a few months, almost 4 months in this situation, and it's terrible. And it's so important to get those people out and give their families some peace. When we knew about Shani, that she's not alive anymore, the first reaction was we were kind of relieved. Even it sounds so bad. How can you be relieved that you know about the death of your daughter? But, we were always afraid those 3 weeks. What happened to her? What do they do to her? How does she be there? And how does she come back from there? It's another question. That at least we knew she died in the beginning and she didn't suffer, and she's somewhere above, like her soul is not in a quiet place in a better place. And that helped us a little bit with our grief to understand that, yeah. But again, I feel with all those people that are still have their hostages there, and it's terrible.
And you live in a small village in Israel in Srigim, and you told me that there were 3 families that have lost children already in a
Yes.
small village. 3.
Our village is maybe 1,000 people. It's really a small village. And we were 3 parents that lost their children in the same day. One is a good friend of mine. Her son with her daughter-in-law was killed in the kibbutz, and they left 2 babies, 10-month-old twin babies, alone in the kibbutz for a day, without food, without water, and until they could rescue them from there. And now she doesn't have a son anymore, and she has 2 little babies to take care of them, orphans, and another one that lost a soldier son that was also on the border. And there are many other stories of nieces and aunts from neighborhoods, from other villages around us. It's so many. Everybody knows anyone that was affected by that. It's really crazy.
Does that make it easier for you or harder? Does it make it easier because other people are suffering, or harder because you can't imagine how much death there is?
I think it makes it a little bit easier. You're kind of sharing the grief a little bit, but but it's on the other side, it's really unimaginable how big this extent was of this massacre, how it affected so many people in the country. You hear the news or just the television you turn on the day, it's all day, all night. It's stories about the hostages, of people that came back and tell you the stories, of soldiers that fall. Every morning you open the television and you hear how many soldiers have fallen in the last day. And you know, people are worried. They have kids in the army. And every morning you wake up and you just listen for the names of the people and hope you don't know anyone from them. That's what we feel at the moment.
Nissim, and of course, Ricky, my wife and I now have 2 sons. First time. We've had 3 kids in the Army, IDF, but it's the first time we've had the experience of having children at war, and it's a very painful experience. You can't lead a normal life.
Yeah.
Nissim, I know that Israeli men are very tough in general, but you're really tough in particular. You have an interesting Israeli security background that you've never fully revealed. Maybe you're not allowed to. You're connected to the police. You were in the Shabak, Israel's internal security services. You look like James Bond. You know. Your daughter, I want to ask you 2 things. The first is being trained as a soldier and as a fighter, and you're a tough guy. When did you know that video that was circulating that morning was your daughter? How did it make you feel in terms of what you wanted to do to the men that were doing that to her? I'm a father of 6 daughters. And what did you do about it? Because you only found out that she was murdered about 3 weeks later, is that correct? If you can please talk about that.
Thank you, Rabbi. Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. We woke up on the 7th of October at around 6:45 in the morning. And we heard the rockets that the Hamas, that the Gazan people threw towards Tel Aviv. And we live in a very small village, beautiful village in the middle of a forest, very calm place. And it was at around 6:45 in the morning. We heard all the rockets, and I told my wife, I didn't know that Shani was even in the party. I thought that she's at her house in Tel Aviv. She has her own house in Tel Aviv, her own car. So I told my wife, call Shani and see that she's in a shelter or in a secured room. So we called Shani at 6:45 in the morning, and she answered. Usually she doesn't answer until 10 o'clock, but she answered. And we asked her, where are you, Shani? And she said, I'm at the party. There is problems here, and she sounded very stressed. there is a problem here, and we are heading towards Tel Aviv. And you know, as a father, my daughter is driving towards Tel Aviv. She has her own car. Everything is fine. And actually, she started driving towards Tel Aviv. And after around like 15 minutes of drive, and now we know it because we got some recordings from the inside of the car, of her car. She thought it was a car accident. She came to some kind of a junction, and she saw 12 cars in front of her, and the cars were in kind of a bad shape, so she thought it was a car accident. And because she thought it was a car accident, actually they called an ambulance, the people in her car. And they said, look, there is a huge accident here, 12 cars, one after each other. But then the terrorist came and killed her and the guy in the back, which was a beautiful man, and also kidnapped her boyfriend, and he's still in Gaza.
Shani's boyfriend is in Gaza.
Yeah, Shani's boyfriend is still in Gaza.
Do you know if he's alive?
According to the intelligence, he was alive on the 27th of October, but since then, we don't have too many details about him, if he's alive or not. You know, and we at home, we didn't know what happened because we heard the rockets, so we have to go to the shelter room. And at around maybe 10:30 in the morning, a friend, an ex-boyfriend from Shani, sent us this video, which was...
Well, 10:30, so 4 hours after.
Yeah, 4 hours
Three
after.
and a half hours after.
Yeah.
Sent you this video.
Yeah, he sent me this video. And he was like, he couldn't handle himself. And he sent us the video and he said, can it be Shani? And now you must understand, Shani is a beautiful girl. She's tall and beautiful hair like this. And there we saw the tattoos on her legs. And it was her. And as a father, it's very difficult, you know, to see such. So what we did, because I have a history in the army, something like he mentioned, not. So immediately I thought like, Shani's German because of my wife. I took the German passport and I put it on the table and I said, from now on, this is Shani. And I was hiding because I thought that the Hamas people, if they see that she is German, the chances that she will get out of Gaza is much higher than she is Jewish. So I was hiding, and she went to Germany, and she went to the consul. And we always said, you know, she's a German woman, and look what happened to her. The day after the 7th of October, the day after, it was Sunday morning, all over Europe, the main pages all over Europe, half of the page you see Shani, and it's written there, look at this beautiful German girl, and on the right side, you saw this picture. And it's written there, and look at these barbarians. And actually, I think this was the purpose of life of Shani. So people will know what is good and what is bad, what is beauty and what is evil. And actually, people now, when they see Shani, they see the beauty, the dancing, and she was always chasing after parties, and she was a very happy girl. She was dancing a lot and going out with friends and having good time, you know, as everybody should. And I always ask her, you know, Shani, you're sometimes dancing all night. What is this dancing all night? I mean, I never danced all night. I danced when I was drunk, when I was younger. But what is this dancing all night? Once I asked her, because it was interesting for me, that dancing from 8 o'clock in the morning until 8 o'clock in the evening until 8 o'clock in the morning for 12 hours. What is this? So she told me, Father, we get spiritually, because so many people are dancing together, and there is so much music, and everybody's together and dancing. She said, we are like, spiritually, we go up and we pray. That's what she told me, we pray. And it was very strange for me as a father, she's dancing and she's praying, but yes, they were praying. They got higher and higher spiritually. We were not sure that Shani died, like now we know, but at that time, as a father and mother, we tried to look for the hope, like for better. And we didn't know that she was dead, because we didn't see blood on the car, and you can see there is no blood, and everybody's body has at least 8 liters of blood, so you must see on a white Toyota some blood, and there is no blood. And then the Hamas, they were clever. They did a good operation, they did good operation, these Hamas people. They planned it for like 10 years with Iranian money. The Hamas sent us some, not an email, but it was like a WhatsApp. And they said, your daughter is in a hospital in Gaza, and she's okay. She was wounded, but she's okay. And we thought that she's alive. And in a hospital also, in the same day, somebody tried to take money from her credit card. And it was 500 meters from the hospital. So we said, okay, now we have this WhatsApp, and we have the credit card. And also we got some other video that it was a night video, so we couldn't see so well. That she's lying in the back of a pickup, chained like this, and we thought that she's alive. And me, I'm volunteering for the police in a special unit, because we have many problems, especially in the south of Israel. It's a motorcycle police unit. And because of what happened, we couldn't ride on motorcycles. So I took a bulletproof vehicle, and I went to Gaza border. And from morning to night, in the 12 hours shift that I had, from morning till night.
Looking for your daughter.
Yeah, looking for our daughter. First of all, we looked for the car. And I went to see that there were piles of burned car, and you couldn't even recognize the shape of the car from the way it was destroyed. And I went to Gaza, and from morning till night, for 12 hours, every 10 seconds, there is a rocket coming from Gaza towards Tel Aviv. And the IDF, the army, which are shooting towards the building and trying to destroy Hamas building. And it's every 10 seconds. And I thought to myself, I hope Shani is not somewhere there under in the tunnels, because they have huge tunnel system. I'm talking about 6-7 floors of tunnel, which each one of them is around 100 kilometers. And people, I saw a picture from the inside of the police, that someone is riding on a motorcycle inside Gaza tunnels, and he's driving 150 kilometers an hour in a tunnel, which is impossible, but it is possible. They were building these tunnels for years with Iranian money. It's unbelievable what they did there. And at the end, the same day that I was there in Gaza area, I got home, and the army was waiting for me at home, and they told me, look, we found a small piece like this, of an inner skull of Shani. We did a DNA, and for sure nobody can exist without this piece of a bone.
They had taken your DNA to test it?
They took our DNA. The police and the army are working in a perfect way, really. They took our DNA, and immediately they came and they told us, look, this is the DNA of Shani, and she's dead, and you have to do Shiva. Shiva is you sit down, the whole family together. And since that day, it is sad, to lose a father, to lose a daughter, to lose a friend. It's difficult to everybody. And it can drag you down. Your daughter died. It can just drag you down. And I thought to myself, I will not go down. I'll do things that will honor the dancers, the police officers that died, the soldiers, and the civilians. And that we cannot live together as neighbors with such savages. We cannot. And since then, I'm a lot in the media of Israel, and I'm talking about it. I was a physics teacher in universities. And sometimes you have a problem on the wall, and you solve it for like 5 hours. And at the end, you have a solution. And my students really loves me, and I love them, and I gave a lot for everyone. But there is one solution. And when I thought about the solution for Israel, what can we do to avoid such thing? Because they are saying, in a loud and clear voice, they are saying, we will do it again and again and again. So what can we do as a nation, as a country, as the Bnei Israel? We are the Bnei Israel. We are the same people that came out of Egypt. Together, all of us. We came out of Egypt. We are the same Bnei Israel from the Bible, and you know it. What can we do? How can we do something that it will never happen again? Because it's impossible. So we are a group of people now that are talking about it. And the only solution is that the people of the world, really, all the leaders like yourself, all the top leaders of the world, and the United Nations, Mr. Guterres, will unite together and find the Gaza refugees another country. I know that it is difficult, but was the establishment of Israel not be difficult? It was even impossible, but it happened. And something like this must happen. I know that it's hard to think about it, but it is possible. First of all, for their own good. There are kids there, there are families in Gaza. We have to help also the future of the Gazan people. And this is the only way, because if not, we are in the same problem. And Elon Musk, which I really appreciate this guy, Elon Musk said this war is an impossible war. And why? Because now we are killing, the IDF are killing 30,000 Hamas rapist people. Yeah? But each one of them have 5 kids. So we have now, in the next 7 years, because the kids are 12 years old, in the next 7 years, until they will be 19 years old, we will have 150,000 Hamas new. And this is a big problem. And it's not, I didn't say it. It's Elon Musk.
You mean children who were raised with that ideology?
Yeah. Somebody told me, let's teach them. Let's teach them to change their behavior by, different different. And I was thinking about the Nazis. My wife is German, and I studied a little bit about Nazism. Nazism started at around 1920 so, and ended at around 1940 so. It was 20 years from the minimum to the maximum, and then again to the minimum. 20 years. If it's 20 years, you can somehow change the people and make them, being normal again and being good again, as my wife, as her family, as all the German people. But when we are talking about the Palestinians and the Muslims, especially in Israel, the Gazan people, it's something that they are holding for like 1,300 years. And the education and everything there is like for 1,300 years. And you cannot change something that is 1,300 years old against the Jews. We want to live in peace with everyone, really.
That's a very interesting point. And let me just be clear, two things. Number one, of course, I'm aware of timing, and we're also going to finish the Torah tonight. But I'm aware of two things. I want to discuss two areas tonight: grief and loss, something that we all share tonight. I lost my mother. Thank God she lived to 80, but death is never a good thing. Bobby, you lost your father when you were 14. He was 42. It's hard to believe. And you lost your daughter. She was 22. I want to discuss the human aspect, and then I also want to discuss policy. So let me find somewhere in the middle based on what you just said. Bobby, let me turn to you and take some of what Nissim said. First of all, it's not true that an ideology, that Islam as an ideology is opposed to Judaism, because we had periods in history where Jews flourished under Islam. The greatest rabbi that ever lived, Maimonides, was the personal physician to the greatest Muslim conqueror of all time, Sultan Salah al-Din Saladin. The greatest rabbinic period in Judaism was when the Jews lived under Muslim rule in the golden age of Spanish Jewry. And I personally have a student from Oxford who studied law named Ross Creel. Can everyone understand me, or is my voice too bad?
No, it's okay.
Who built the Jewish community in Dubai. And he started in 2008. And I have spoken for him in Abu Dhabi, Dubai, UAE. I am safer as a Jew with a kippah walking around Dubai than I am in Harvard Yard or at Columbia University here in New York. I can't walk with a yarmulke in Times Square right now. I've been attacked 3 times in 1 week. Millions of people watch the attacks against me. Now, Christianity was also very hostile to Judaism. I was just in Italy yesterday. I spoke for my mother in Venezia, in Venice. Christianity was very antagonistic to Judaism. It was changed by a pope that both Bobby and I revere, Pope John the 23rd, who became pope in 1960. Unfortunately, in 1957, after a bad pope, in my opinion, Pope Pius XII. So, the real question is whether we are allowed to hate the evil perpetrators that desecrate a religion. When we were just in that reception, Bobby, you said that even Palestinians are held hostage by Hamas. So here's what I want to put to you now. So in other words, I agree with you, Nissim, there are terrorists who hate us, who want to annihilate us. That's Hamas. Do all Palestinians, do all Arabs want to annihilate us? Many hate us, there's no question about it. They're being indoctrinated. But we're seeing with the Abraham Accords, there are many Arabs that want to live in peace with us. The Abraham Accords are a miracle. Bahrain, Morocco, Oman, UAE. But Bobby, I have to challenge you now. What if you're too forgiving? What if you're not prepared to fight evil enough and you want to be president of the United States? You speak out against the endless wars. I agree with you. You turned out to be right about the Iraq war. If Saddam Hussein, who was an absolute murderer, killer, killed 800,000 Arabs, but if he was still in power in Baghdad, there would be a check against Iran. Today, Iraq is another proxy state of Iran. So you turn out to be right, unfortunately. And you want to end the endless wars. But I have always felt, perhaps mistakenly, that the Kennedy family in general, and maybe you in particular, practiced too much Christian charity, too much Christian forgiveness. Whether or not Sirhan killed your father, or whether or not there was a conspiracy in others, why try to get him off the hook every 5 years when he comes up in probation hearings, or the parole? Or Dexter, very tragically, Dexter King died last week. Dexter King looked exactly like his father, Martin Luther King, just like you look exactly like your father, Robert Kennedy. Dexter King went and met with James Earl Ray, who, even if he didn't kill Martin Luther King, was a dyed-in-the-wool, racist, bigot, disgusting human being. Now, Sirhan, even if it wasn't his bullets that killed your father, hated Jews, hated your father, wrote 1,000 times that he was going to kill your father. Why not at least hate evil enough to fight evil? I don't mean to gloat about evil. You know, the day that, I'm sorry to be verbose, the day that Barack Obama, to his credit, killed Osama bin Laden, he announced it at 11:28 p.m. Within an hour, there were 10,000 people outside the White House cheering. I was opposed to that. The Bible says, "Bin fol oivecha al tismach," never cheer when your enemy falls. So we don't celebrate, but we do kill them. And we do take pride in killing them, even though we don't rejoice. You told me, Ricky, that you weren't necessarily happy to hear that the IDF already killed 2 of the 5 terrorists who had their legs draped over your daughter's dead body. I was happy to hear that. I didn't gloat. I don't want to celebrate. I hope the IDF kills all 5 of them. Not their children, God forbid, not their wives, but I hope the IDF. So, you want to be the leader of the free world, like your uncle was, like your father almost was. Don't you believe, Bobby, you have to hate evil enough to fight it? Iran, which now controls Damascus, it controls Beirut, it controls Yemen, it controls Baghdad. Don't you at least believe that maybe you're being too forgiving of this evil if America is the only real, that little wall you see around, that's America and the rest of the world, not that you guys are evil. Don't you believe that maybe you're being too forgiving?
Well, that's a lot of questions. As you know, I support Israel. I think that Hamas has to be destroyed. I try not to hate because I think hating is like swallowing poison and hoping someone else will die, that it actually is corrosive to ourselves. But I also understand that there are justified wars. I think almost every war that we fought in the last century was unjustified and unnecessary. World War II was justified. We were attacked. World War I, we should have never gotten into, and my grandfather opposed it, and I believe he was correct. It was a war to preserve empires, and most of our wars have ulterior motives. Israel was attacked. Israel has no choice but to destroy Hamas. Israel was in the middle of a ceasefire. Hamas, as I've made the point again and again, has not only victimized Israel, but it is holding the Palestinian people hostage. I am pro-Palestinian, and as you pointed out, there was a Palestinian who pled guilty to murdering my father. He is serving a prison sentence. My brother was hijacked by Palestinians. In 1971, his plane was hijacked to Yemen in a commercial airliner, and the plane was blown up in the desert. And the demand of the terrorists was that Sirhan be released from prison. I have fought for Sirhan has now been in prison for almost 60 years. And I have fought for his payroll. When he was convicted, my wife sent a letter to the judge asking that he not be given the death penalty. So I don't believe that hatred is a good thing. I believe that. And I also believe that Israel has no choice but to destroy Hamas. And, they were in the middle of the fifth ceasefire when the attack took place. People who are now demanding that Israel have a ceasefire. And by the way, Israel is still getting attacked every day by missiles. And we hear this trope that Gaza is the most densely populated place on earth. Well, guess what? Tel Aviv has twice the population density, and it is being targeted by missiles all the time. And the Israelis have exercised more forbearance than any other people in the world would. Instead of attacking, if the United States was attacked by Mexico, if Mexico elected a government that then said, we're going to reclaim Texas, and they sent missiles onto San Antonio, we would not build an Iron Dome. We would go into Mexico and destroy the people who did that. And we wouldn't wait 16 years. We'd do it today, and every other nation in the world would do that immediately. If a smaller neighbor declared war on them and declared genocide against their people, there is no nation in the world that would put up with it except Israel. And it's odd to me that people are now faulting Israel for finally, after 16 years, going in to remove Hamas, and 5 failed ceasefires, each one of which Hamas has used to regroup, to rearm, to raise the banner, and to train more and more kids, to indoctrinate children from when they're toddlers, to kill Jews. And there's no stop, there's no end to it unless there is no peace. I believe in a two-state solution. Rabbi doesn't agree with me, but that's never going to happen when Hamas is in control. It can't. I want the Palestinians to have sovereignty. I want them to have their own state, their own freedom. But that cannot happen while Hamas is in control. And, people have a short-sighted belief that ceasefire will stop the killing. But as a statesman, I have to try to stop the killing. The amount of people who die over the long term. And the way to do that is by rooting out Hamas now. And, I'll say this, that I was so touched by your description, and I shared this with some of the families that I talked to in the early days of October. I lost 2 of my brothers, including, after my father died, and one of my brothers died. I asked my mother if the hole that they leave in you, that our loved ones leave in you when they pass, if that hole ever gets any smaller. And my mother said to me, it never gets any smaller, but our job is to grow ourselves bigger around the hole. And the way that we do that is by considering the person we lost and taking the best aspects of their character, the greatest virtues they had, the things that we admire about them, that we loved about them, and trying to incorporate those things into our own character through discipline, through restraint, through dedication and devotion. And in doing that, we make ourselves larger, and the whole then gets proportionally smaller, and the pain becomes bearable after time. And we also, in doing that, bestow on that person who we lost a kind of immortality, because then they live forever through our character and through our example. And when you were talking about your daughter and her love of dancing, it made me think of this passage in the Bible that I've always wondered about David, King David, who was the most beloved not only by God but by the Jewish people. And that when he brought in the Ark of Covenant after a great victory, and he was chosen the king over Saul, he danced. He drank and he danced. And he danced all night. And he was later berated by King Saul's wife, by Micah, who said that he had humiliated himself and that he had disgraced himself and that he had lost his dignity. And he said to her, and I will do it again, and I'll do it worse the next time, because the people love me and God loves me. And, God wants us to celebrate. He didn't put us here to be grim, to obey a bunch of rules. He put us here to celebrate the life that he gave us. And in my own religious tradition, Jesus, who was a Jew and always considered himself a Jew, his first miracle by which his divinity was revealed to the public was when he turned water into wine for a wedding celebration so that people could dance, so that they could celebrate. Because that is ultimately what Shani described as this communal experience that she had through her dancing with all these other people that was like a prayer. That is the ultimate prayer that God wants. I've always heard that God can't be angry at you if you're grateful. That no matter how bad you behave, if you have gratitude toward God for what you've been given, that he can't stay mad at you for long. And, Shani was a beautiful, beautiful girl, just stunningly beautiful, but she was also a luminous soul. She put out a huge light, and everybody saw that. And she celebrated her life and her happiness, and she saw God in that celebration. And that's an extraordinary example for all of us to learn from and to try to incorporate in our own lives.
Bobby, in running to be president, you missed your calling. You would have made a great rabbi. That was a beautiful sermon. I'm going to return to the hatred thing soon because that was too eloquent to get into a debate yet. Ricky, my son-in-law, we all had dinner together yesterday. My son-in-law is Israeli. He's a radiologist. He's a doctor. He's a healer. Like what Bobby said, he brings life, not death. But after the October 7th massacre, he was very down. He's here tonight, my son-in-law, Dr. Yossi Glick, who gave me some kind of medicine to allow me to speak tonight. I hope it was legal, by the way. He was very down because he's Israeli, American. He felt that the Jewish people had become a tragic people. Like Israel was going to solve the Holocaust. Theodor Herzl's vision was to create a state where we would be protected. We were going to have an army that was going to keep us safe. And suddenly, everyone said that October 7th was a Holocaust day. It actually wasn't, because 10,000 Jews died every day in the Holocaust for 4 years. My mother was born October 23rd, 1923. I don't have to look it up. I know 10,000 Jews died that day. Treblinka, every day. So only 1/10 of Jews who died every day died on October 12th, October 7th. But it was actually worse than the Holocaust. Because in the Holocaust, there was no Jewish army to protect us. There was no Jewish state to receive us. Here, it was like, there's no hope. We have a Jewish state, and we have an army, and we're still massacred. No solution. So my son-in-law was very down. As a German woman who became Israeli, after losing your daughter, is that how you felt that Israel had become an irreversibly tragic nation? That tragedy was now built into our DNA? That after something like this can happen, we had to accept that sadness is part of our future always? Or is it what Bobby just said, that the experience of tragedy could allow you to grow, because your daughter did love to dance. And what he doesn't even realize how prophetic what he just said was, Bobby, because we put on the front of the Torah, I kept this a secret for you to see only at the end to surprise you, we added a dancing woman, which is Shani, on the front of the Torah. Is Bobby correct that you can enlarge yourself with joy? Or was some of the depression being felt by world Jewry now that we are a tragic nation, that even Israel won't solve anti-Semitism, that Holocaust can happen even with an Israeli army? Which is correct?
I don't know, yeah. I was very moved to what he said, really, the words, and I can understand it, that if you really take the things inside, like you said, of the person you grow, and it really makes sense to me, and I really connected to this one. I was very disappointed by what happened, really. I never expected that this could happen in Israel with all the Modi'in and the Secret Service and everything. Nobody can understand how this really happened. And I know since I'm in Israel, it's always a back and forth. There are attacks, there are terrorist attacks, and then the rockets. And, you know, we used to living in this crazy world, you know. When all the newspapers came and you said, yeah, the rockets we're used to, we go to a safety room, and they looked at us, well, what is a safety room? Where to go? And they can't understand that we're living in such a crazy routine there all the time, and I don't know anything else because it's really for the years I lived there. But I do have the optimism that in the end it will work out. Israelis are very tough people, very resilient, and it seems like always that they're coming out of bad situations. I mean, the bad situations are coming always back, but they're also overcoming them, and the people are very strong, and they're very coming together in those difficult situations and help each other, and this will make Israeli growth. I mean, this makes them stronger, you know, especially those catastrophes. The people, the human people are really getting stronger there through those, and more and better people, and in the end they overcome. That's maybe it's just me because I'm optimistic. I don't see a solution yet. I have no idea how they solve this solution in Gaza, but I am still trying to be optimistic, and it will work out. That's what my personal, because that's the way we really, I try to think always positive, and also with my daughter, we keep on moving. We don't want to be now sad all the time, and we move on, and that's the way of life. I mean, it's also fate in our case. I don't know how to explain it. And yeah, and I hope we come out of this, and we will be stronger than before, and that's my personal.
Well, and just before I move to Nissim, I want to ask a question to the two of you specifically, because Nissim might agree with me a bit more that I'm struggling with optimism right now, but is it harder to grieve when the tragedy is so public, when everyone's watching you? Bobby, as an American, one of the most moving experiences of my life is watching the video of the funeral cortege of the train that took your father from St. Patrick's Cathedral on Fifth Avenue here in New York City to his burial place near his brother in Arlington. You were on that train, and everybody standing and saying goodbye, but how could you grieve? It was so public. And even seeing your mother suddenly draped in black in St. Patrick's, and it's suddenly the same black worn by your aunt, and you're a pallbearer at your father's funeral and you're 14. And now you know that 1 billion people watched this video. It's horrific. And I had to ask your permission to show it. Yeah. And you both said we should show it because you want. And it was like what your aunt said when your uncle was murdered. She wouldn't take off her dress. And Lady Bird Johnson begged her before the swearing in of Lyndon Johnson. Lyndon Johnson didn't want pictures of the blood on Jackie's dress, and the photographer, he told him to take the picture from on top. You don't see the blood on her dress. And she famously said over and over again, I want them to see what they did. But is it harder to mourn and grieve when the murder, when the loss, when the catastrophe is so public, Bobby? Take care.
I find it hard to answer that question because I feel like it was probably easier for us because, first of all, I had a very supportive family and a very, deep religious faith and a lot of role models for how to process grief. But also, I had this experience of having the whole world share the grief with our family. And I think that that is a source, ultimately, of comfort. Like Ricarda talked about the neighbors coming over and bringing food and consoling her. And I think that any time that you share a burden with other people, that it cuts the burden in half. And, I think I feel privileged that I was able to have so many other people share part of that burden. And over my lifetime, over the past, 55 years, I've had so many people come up to me, almost daily because of what I'm doing now. People come up and say, I never got over your dad's death. That moment changed my life. And it's comforting to hear that so many other people's lives were also disrupted by that tragedy, that I was not bearing it alone, that there were other people bearing it with me. And so, there may have been moments that I would have rather been alone, but, I had moments alone to grieve. And I think the fact that so many people felt the loss in ways that were different than me, but also similar to me, was a source of comfort to myself and to other members of my family.
But you didn't feel that eyes were on you and you couldn't cry and you couldn't grieve because people expected you to have this face of strength?
Well, there may have been moments like that, but I still had times alone. I wasn't always in the public eye. The best way that I can answer your question is that I think it was probably easier than it was if if my dad was shot and died and nobody cared about it. A lot of people cared, and that I think that that was comforting to me.
And Ricky, you feel the same way?
I think I feel the same way, yeah. It helps sharing the grief. I met some people that also their child was killed in an accident or something terrible, and they were alone, there nothing else happens, and it was the most difficult for them to be out there, and everything is normal, and nobody kind of cares or nobody understands, and they were grieving alone. I think that's more difficult. But the reason that we are allowed to share this terrible video is not because of the grief or something. It is, I have the feeling I was the most saddest really seeing the reactions all over the world, not what's happening in Israel, but how people see what happened in Israel and don't understand really what is happening. And since then, we're really on a quest a little bit to, me in Germany and he also in television, to share the story from a real person. We're the persons, we were affected, and we tell the story of Shani, of the beautiful and happy girl that was killed in such a brutal way, in order to make the world understand. And that's the reason. I really hate to see the video, and I don't like it too, but I overcome the video. We've seen it so many 100 times to find all the little clues. So we don't mind as long as it helps just to share the story and give a personal story out to the world that is real and it's not fake news and it happened and that's the reason.
And you've been, Shani's memory has been particularly embraced in Germany. And the German chancellor was the first world leader to go to Israel after the massacre. And he had to lie on the floor in Ben Gurion Airport because rockets were landing on his aircraft. Nissim, I wish that I could share the optimism that Bobby expressed so eloquently and that Ricky expressed in it the first time I interviewed her as well. But you seem to maybe share with me a bit of the skepticism that the problem with the murder of your daughter is that it's not going to end with her, that this conflict isn't going to end. And you're looking for solutions. And you brought up a very controversial solution. You said that you don't see a future for the Palestinian people living in Gaza. We have not seen any nations embrace even a single Palestinian refugee. So first of all, let me be clear. I totally agree with Bobby Kennedy running for president of the United States that the Jewish people's conflict is not with the Palestinian people. The Palestinian people are my brothers, they are my sisters. Islam is a great world religion that I revere. And it is a pure monotheism, it's a beautiful religion. The problem is Hamas, the problem are the terrorists, the problem is the indoctrination, the problem is the extremists. And yet, Gaza is rubble. And to rebuild it again, there have been 5 wars since the 2005 withdrawal. My children sitting here tonight, and remember guys, you cannot leave. My kids are going to be the last people writing letters with the Louks and with Bobby and the Torah. So my children were the last kids to plant trees in Gaza as Jews before the 2005 Hitnatkut, before the withdrawal. I took them there. It was Tu B'Shvat, which was 3 days ago, the anniversary, the Jewish New Year for trees, and we planted trees. I knew the withdrawal would be a catastrophe, but not this bad. I never dreamed it would be this. Five wars, 1,200 Jews murdered. You seem to be looking for a solution. South Africa just took Israel to the International Court of Justice. I love South Africa. I've been there 20 times. They didn't take in one Palestinian refugee, not one. Queen Rania of Jordan condemned Israel and said, you're guilty of genocide. Jordan is a country 20 times the size of Israel. They didn't take in one Palestinian refugee. By the way, the United States hasn't taken in one. I could go on. Now, I don't want to focus on that policy specifically, but I want to come back to this issue. What is the solution to make sure there aren't more Shani Louks? And I'm going to want Bobby to respond to this, but let me just put this. Bobby, you're correct. That's so many unnecessary wars. World War I, no one can make sense of World War. A stupid war, dumb war, led to World War II. But when people criticize your grandfather, who was the American ambassador to the Court of St. James, and they call him an anti-Semite, and you educated me about how that's a lie, and I accept that. But it especially bothers me that they call him that when he buried a son who died fighting Hitler, who was a true hero, Joseph Kennedy Jr., who volunteered for a suicide mission to bomb Hitler, and that your grandfather had to live with that pain for the rest of his life, as did the rest of the family. But the reason why there was peace in Europe after the war, Bobby, is that they allowed the United States to fight the war to the conclusion, which was the total destruction of Nazism, the total destruction of German militarism, Prussian militarism that was created by Bismarck, that was continued by Kaiser Wilhelm II. The Germans understood there is no future for militarism, so they turned to a great economy, and now they're the most powerful nation in Europe, and nobody cares because it's peaceful. Japan was the same. The biggest movie in America right now with the most Academy Award nominations is Oppenheimer. It's about a quasi-communist, socialist Jew who grew up 10 blocks from here who only built the atomic bomb because he knew that Hitler had to be destroyed. He never wanted that bomb dropped on the Japanese. He wanted it dropped on Germany, but it wasn't ready in time. We fought Hitler to destruction, so Germany changed. We fought Japan to destruction, so Japan changed. But Israel is never allowed to fight Hamas to destruction, so it never changes. We can't fight. So, speak to this for a moment. Do you believe there's going to be peace in the Middle East if there's a ceasefire? If Israel again has to stop the war, if Hamas is not destroyed? Not unnecessary wars, Bobby. I agree with you with that. But isn't the lesson of the Second World War a war that you agree should have been fought, that unless you fight it to its conclusion, where its leaders come to the realization that there is no military option, there has to be other means, that there will always be war? Is that what you're concerned about with Hamas in Gaza?
First of all, what you said about David the king before that was beautiful, really. He was dancing, and when I think about it, my daughter was also dancing like him, you know. And like after that, they thought the Messiah, will come out of David. And why? Because he was dancing. And it was very special what you said about David, which really touched my heart. About the Hamas people, Hamas is ideology. It's not people. You kill all the people, but still you have the ideology of the Hamas. And this is a big problem. You know, when Syria, when Daesh fought Syria and there were problems in the whole area, 6.5 million Syrians left Syria and they live in Europe. No problems. When India got their independence in August 1947, 4 million Hindus went to India, and like 2 million or so went to Pakistan, and there were 2 countries there. And it was okay. There were problems between Turkey and Greece. Many went to Turkey and many went to Greece, and everything was solved and everything was fine. I'm telling you, the only solution, and we thought about it a lot, and we are a group of people that thought about everything that can happen, really. The only solution is that the world will find them future to the people of Gaza. They must have a future. You know, the Secretary of the United Nations said it's the most dense place in the world. So it's still the same area. They said it's an open jail. It's still an open jail because there will still be borders with Egypt and Israel and the sea. So nothing changes. We have to do something which is drastically different. Let's unite, you know. Russia, China, America, let's unite. The United Nations, let's unite together and find them better future for these poor kids in Gaza. Yeah? So they will have better education. They will have better medical support. They will have like life, you know, they can be engineers. In Gaza, they can be only terrorists. Let's separate the countries, but Israel is so small. I mean, Israel is as big as New York, I think. It's so small that we cannot be such close neighbors. And we really love peace. We don't want to fight with anyone. If we have borders, we don't want to go to the other side and attack and conquer. We don't want to do it. But they came into our country. They raped the girls. They killed the babies, you know, and it was unbelievable. And when I went there with a bulletproof vehicle, I went there to the area. And you know, I saw what they've done. It's like unbelievable, and we cannot. It's like your neighbor. You know that your neighbor is a rapist. You know that your neighbor is a killer. You don't want such a neighbor. He must be in jail. He must be somewhere else. You know, there's That's why I think that's the only way is that the world and the United Nations really will help Israel, and we are like begging sometimes. I think that America are the saints of the world, you know. America saved Israel many times, especially this time. And America are the saints of the world. America saved Israel 2 times now. On the 1973 Yom Kippur War, America saved us. And also now, because we ran out of ammunition, and you help us, and we really thank you. We really thank the American people. You are the saints of the world, really. And this time we really need your help to solve this problem. And it cannot be by being close together. It cannot be. We must find something different, because close together we have been since 2006. We were together. We left Gaza, we didn't want anything from Gaza. We left Gaza, we were in Israel, but still it was an open jail. And what now? It's not an open jail. The things get like, so like the world must unite really and find them another country in Africa, wherever, so they will have like better life, you know, for the kids of Gaza. And I said it for many times. And I know it is hard to think about it, and my wife thinks like you. But this is the only solution, and we really need your help.
So, as we start to wrap up, because we're also going to finish the Torah, let me give the last word to Bobby. Let me just say, Bobby, you've paid a significant, you are paying a significant political price among some of your base because of your stalwart support for Israel. You have emerged, and I've said this publicly and on the record, and I will say it again, you have emerged as the most pro-Israel candidate for the presidency in his support for Israel in memory. You have declared the Jewish people to be the indigenous people of the land. Your attention to detail about the conflict is astonishing. I read something you wrote yesterday that was, I used to try to give you facts about the Middle East, and here we are months later, and you're mentoring me on the Middle East. You watched the 47-minute video in the office of Ambassador Danny, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations. Someone help me. Danny Danon. We had 3 Dannys over the past 5 years. And you took extensive notes. So let me put this to you. What was your reaction to October 7th? How do you feel about some of what you're hearing from a father? And Nissim Louk is now not speaking as Nissim Louk. He's speaking as the father of the most famous victim of October 7th. Their daughter's death and murder was the only one that was personally announced by the president of the state of Israel, Yitzhak Herzog, who called a press conference. I don't even want to say the words that, am I allowed to say it?
Yeah, of course.
He announced that Shani Louk was beheaded.
Which was not true, but he's a good friend of our family, the president of Israel, and we talked to him, and it was a mistake, but we found this little piece of bone I told you about.
But you have sat Shiva with nobody. You sat Shloshim with nobody. You're saying Kaddish. They don't have their daughter's body. They have no burial. They have the bone which they're keeping, right? What was your conclusion about October 7th? You're paying a political price. What is the future for the Middle East? And finally, 3 American soldiers were murdered by an Iranian-backed militia yesterday. 3 American soldiers. Sitting in front of us is, Dana, can you raise your hand? This fine African-American woman, who's one of my dearest friends in the whole world, was the chief Pentagon spokesperson for the entire United States military under Secretary Mattis, appointed by President Trump. It's an honor to have you here tonight. She was the equivalent of a 4-star general. She was the voice of the American military. They killed, and the American military is the single greatest force for good on planet Earth, period, more than any religion or anything. They keep women from being raped. They preserve democracy and freedom. They are our greatest heroes. 3 were killed yesterday. You want to be the leader of the free world. You can't answer all those questions briefly, but what's the solution?
I mean, I think in the answer to what, I think should have happened after October 7th, if the Security Council on October 8th had condemned Hamas, had demanded that Qatar and Turkey turn over the leadership of Hamas to the World Court for trial for war crimes, if the rest of the world, including the Arab world, had expressed solidarity for that, and if the European countries had also done that, we would be living in a different world today. And Qatar has the ability to do that, and that's not what happened. And I want peace in the Mideast, but I don't think Israel has any choice but to eradicate Hamas. And as you pointed out, after World War II at Casablanca, Churchill got angry at Roosevelt because Roosevelt unilaterally announced that they wanted an unconditional surrender from the Nazis. And Churchill said to Roosevelt, that's going to mean that every German is going to fight to the death. And Roosevelt said the only way to find peace in Europe is to denazify Germany. And ultimately, Churchill agreed to them, but it cost the lives of 2 million Germans. But today, Germany is the richest country in Europe, and it's a prosperous country. And if they had left the Nazi Party intact, it wouldn't have been that way. I want peace for future Palestinians. I want the children to be raised not, with their highest aspiration to put on a suicide vest and go kill a Jew. That's child abuse. And there's a whole generations of children that are being raised and indoctrinated. There's governments that are paying bounties to any Palestinian who kills a Jew. All of these Palestinian terrorists who the 1,000 who died on October 7th and the other ones are collecting bounties, and their families are collecting bounties are in many cases 3 times the average pay salary for somebody in Gaza. Gaza is being held hostage. Gaza should be the richest country in the region. It has beautiful white sand beaches. It has this beautiful port. Shimon Peres, the Israeli prime minister, offered to turn into the Singapore of the West. It's at the confluence of the Suez Canal, the Mediterranean. They gave 4,000 hot houses to Gaza that were donated by the Israeli government, by Jewish philanthropists, to make them self-sufficient. And, Gaza is not a desert. It's a rich area that is an oasis with plenty of fresh water and rich soils. And they've received, the people of Palestine have received more money than any other people in the history of the world from international agencies. When we rebuilt Europe after World War II, we gave in 17 countries per capita $42 per capita, and we rebuilt Europe after 1948. We've given, and that's about $623 in 2023 dollars. We've given to the people of Palestine $8,600 per capita. And Palestine's worse off than we started. 47% unemployment. Astronomically high poverty level. And the leaders of Hamas are billionaires. This is a corporate kleptocracy. It's organized crime. Ismail Haniyeh, Forbes magazine. Forbes magazine says Ismail Haniyeh has $5 billion net worth. The 3 leaders of Hamas have a collective net worth of $11 billion. Mahmoud Abbas is a billionaire. His sons have $750 million. Yasser Arafat died a billionaire. They have a business plan which is to offer no economic opportunity to the people of Palestine, to starve them of economic opportunity, and then create this violence which keeps this flow of international aid from the Arab countries and from the international aid organizations into Gaza, which they skim for their own profit and spend the rest of it building weapons and tunnels rather than schools and businesses and economic prosperity. And I don't see any way out of that if the international community stepped in and did what they should have done, which is to condemn Hamas and to cut them off and to criminally prosecute them and pursue them to the corners of the globe. Then Israel would not need to do what it's doing today. Because Israel was left alone in the world, it has no choice. Oh, all the people who are saying a ceasefire, they're talking to Israel. Hamas isn't going to ceasefire. Hamas has said, we're going to do it again and again and again and again. And they're firing rockets on Tel Aviv right now. So, it is a double standard that nobody would ask of any other nation in the world. And so, I know what should have been done, and it wasn't done. And people who are now blaming Israel are killing civilians. The casualty rate on average since World War II is a 9-to-1 civilian to combatant casualty rate. That is the average. In battles, in urban warfare, it's even higher. And the casualty rate in Gaza is approximately 3-to-1 by the best estimates right now. The Israelis have done more than any military on earth to try to preserve civilian life. To try to lessen civilian casualties. They've sent out 1.2 million pamphlets that are color-coded by date, by neighborhood, to tell people to leave. They've sent 1.2 million robocalls, 1.2 million text messages, 20,000 personal phone calls by Arabic-speaking members of the IDF, the security services, the landlords and tenants in Gaza who they can reach by phone. They invented a piece of ordinance called the roof knocker, where before they bomb a building, they send a small explosive device over to warn the residents to leave. Well, when they do that, they're warning Hamas to leave too. So they're tying their hands behind their backs to fight an implacable enemy that has vowed genocide against their people. No other nation in the world would do that. If this was Chechnya, the Russians would flatten the whole place. The same as every other nation would do. But Israel puts the IDF forces at risk. It puts itself at an extreme disadvantage by giving a warning before it hits any kind of civilian target. We didn't do that in Germany after the war. People who are holding Israel to a different standard than they would hold any other country. And Israel is fighting this war with a higher level of ethics than any nation has ever fought a war on earth. And of course, there are going to be civilian casualties. There are in every war, and it's tragic. And every one of us suffers every time we see photos of children injured and dead and crying. Nobody wants to see that, but you're fighting an enemy that deliberately uses civilian shields, that puts its missile launchers in schools, in hospitals, that puts its ordnance dumps, its ammunition armories in hospitals, that put the hostages in the Shiva hospital. And then Israel gets blamed for killing. Why aren't we blaming Hamas? those civilian casualties? Why doesn't the world blame Hamas, those civilian casualties? That is what should have happened, and that's what, and I agree, America now is standing alone with Israel, and it has to do that, but it's unfortunate that the rest of the world is wrapped up in this propaganda campaign that paints Israel as the bad guy. Israel is doing what any nation would do, which is, after 16 years of patience, it finally, it realized, after this invasion by 3,000 people, killing 3,000 warriors, heavily armed with drones, with backpack rockets, with missiles, with machine guns, taking out the fence line, taking out the cameras, taking out the automatic machine guns, doing things that nobody believed Hamas was capable of. Israel realized this was no longer a tactical option for them. This was a strategic and existential threat to the existence of their nation, and they have no choice to eradicate Hamas, and the world should be supporting them rather than deriding them.
Bobby Kennedy, that was the most perfectly argued statement for Israel's war that I've heard since October 7th, honestly. My friends, you have to indulge me for a few minutes because we're going to complete the Torah. Bobby also has to go, but I have to say one thing to you, and then to the Louks. On the day that a man mourns his mother, on the very first anniversary, and I was very close to my mother, and my mother raised me, and I was her baby. She always called me her baby. On that kind of day, a man is very sincere. And the Talmud says that words that emanate from the heart penetrate the heart. I have watched your presidential candidacy closely. By the way, the head of Bobby's Super PAC is here, Tony Lyons. Are you still here somewhere? I'm not involved in the Super PAC because Tony's my publisher. Why aren't you spending all your time selling my books? But I've watched your campaign. I've watched you attacked. I've watched you called names. The most disgusting thing was when people called you an anti-Semite, when you're the best friend that has ever run for president, best friend Israel's ever had. But But on the day that a son mourns his mother and does a memorial lecture with his mother's name, the most hurtful thing, and this isn't even my place to say it, but I'm going to. The most hurtful thing was when I heard members of your family who want to support a sitting Democratic president, your famous Democratic family, I respect that. But when they said Robert Kennedy bears our father's name but not his values, I want you to know, I cried at my mother's grave today. I put my head on the freezing cold stone and I said, Mommy, more than anything else, I never want to betray you. I know what you stood for. Bobby Kennedy, I want you to know, you not only bear your father's name, you bear your father's values and you bear your father's legacy. Your father was one of the 10 greatest men that this country ever produced, and you are molded so firmly in his image. Your father visited Israel before it was a country as a journalist in the summer of 1948. He wrote 5 articles. He defended Israel with the eloquence that and I sent them to you, and he was amazing. And when he announced for the presidency in April 1968 against the sitting Democratic president named Lyndon Baines Johnson in the United States Senate, in one of the most beautiful speeches he ever gave. The only better speech he gave was the night that Martin Luther King died, when he spoke off the cuff on that flatbed truck. But your father announced immediately that he would sell Israel F-4 Phantom jets that Lyndon Baines Johnson refused to sell. He was always Israel's greatest friend. And you are cut from the same cloth. You don't only bear his name, you bear his values, you bear his image, and you bear his legacy. And God bless you, Bobby. You have to finish the Torah with us. Can you go and come back to the Torah? Okay. So we're going to take 1 minute to bring the Torah here. Bobby's going to be given the honor of doing this, the penultimate letter. So can my family please come up and we're going to complete the Torah right now? Where's Rabbi Raskin, please? Can my children and my grandchildren please come up here? And my wife, Debbie. Rabbi Raskin. My friends, this is the holiest time of the entire Jewish religion. There is never a time like finishing a Torah. I myself have only ever been to 3, and I organized all 3 of them, so it's very hard to be at one. Can all my children please come here? What? Are you serious? They should have done it. Of course. Anyone else want to be my children tonight? Okay, Anya, come up, please. Kalina. I can't even see. Where's Dana? Tony? Maybe we should, I feel so bad now. I feel like the kids should have come before. Who else is here? I can't see. Can we lift the house lights? Gabe, where's Gabe? Gabe, Julie, Chuck, people who organized tonight's event. Where's Rachalea? Gabe, Julie. Can the photographers come here in front of this wall that Biden and Trump built here? Or didn't build here, I'm not sure which one. Gabe, Julie. I can't believe they didn't do a letter during the reception.
No, they did.
The kids did?
Yeah.
No, they didn't. All my kids did? No, right here, please. Okay, I'm just going to wait for Bobby. Okay, so first, okay, how many do we have? We have 25, okay. We're going to do this quick. Okay, Anya, you gave the best speech. You're going to do one of the last letters, okay? Sit down. Where are my phones, by the way? Where's Chuck and where are my phones? You want to do it? Who's going to do it? I need someone to take the pictures, yes. Mazal tov. Kalina. I can't believe our kids are here. Okay. Where is Stephanie Spear? Stephanie? Stephanie is the director of Bobby's Comms. She's the most amazing woman. She's Jewish. She's proud. She's a great friend. Have you ever done this before? This is a great honor. Sit down. He will take a picture. You now, it's one of the 613 commandments of the Torah that you have to write a letter, so now you finally did it. I'm telling you, less than 1% of world Jewry have ever done this. Okay. Of course. He's going to do the second to last letter, and I'm going to do the last one. Dana loves the Bible so much. I wish I knew the Bible as well as Dana does. Yeah, but she's going to do another. This Dana here is representing the United States military and doing this letter. Okay. Tony, you better sell a lot of my books. Definitely. Okay. Choose your letter. Is there anyone else out there that I'm not seeing that we're close to? She's here? Where's my sister Sarah? No, come. Sarla. This is my eldest sibling. Sarla, come on. Sarla, come on. Who else? Julie. Julie helps us organize. She lives in Miami, flew up just to organize this event. Thank you, Julie. Julie, thank you. Sarla? Well, Sarla will do one of the last ones. Bobby, Stephanie did one. Is there anyone who's particularly important to your efforts that you like to call up in your campaign? Stephanie did one? Okay. Sarla? No, come on. No, these are the last letters. These are the most important ones. Bobby, this is my eldest sister, Sarah.
I just turned 60, much older. He's still 57.
Sarah, sit down.
Thank you.
Bob. Amen.
Good, yeah, thank God.
Okay. We're coming to the end. Ricky. So I want you, okay, 1 second. Now, as we come to the last few ones, we still have a few more. Oh, you know what? Wait, actually, before you go, Gabe. Who else is going to take a picture? Gabe. I'll figure it out. 1 second. Debbie here. My friend Gabe works for the UN, works for refugees day and night. He works for the United Nations High Commission for Refugees. Came in from Geneva in Israel to help with this event. Gabe's father was an African-American Christian, grew up in North Carolina, converted to Judaism, and now lives in Israel. Wait, did you do it? We lost your picture. Okay. How many more do we have? Okay. Okay, Ricky. Oh, so now I have to explain this. So, Sorrel, if you can come here. Gabe, you can take pictures of us explaining this. Nissim, come here. Bobby, do you mind standing here as well? As we get to the last letters, I want to, Sorrel, come here as well. Debbie? So, my mother, Bobby, was famous for hospitality. As my sister can tell you, my mother raised me by herself. She had very little money, but every Friday night for the Sabbath, we had 30 or 40 guests. She did that for about 40 years. So she hosted tens of thousands of people. So for her Torah, we created the tent of Abraham because Abraham's tent had no walls. It only had open space because he invited in all. And that's why he's Avraham, the father of many nations. Then, the 30th day of my mother's passing happened to be the exact 80th anniversary of the murder of Mordechai and Alevich, one of the most greatest Jewish fighters that ever lived. He was the leader of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising. He was only 23 years old when he died, and he led 700 fighters, and he held off the SS and the Gestapo for 3 weeks in the most famous act of resistance during the Holocaust. He's my personal hero, Mordechai Alevich. Before he died, in front of Jürgen Stroop, the SS general sent by Heinrich Himmler himself, he actually raised the Israeli flag over the Warsaw Ghetto, and that's commemorated here. And then when Shani Louk was murdered on October 7th, I spoke to my wife. We were crying. I didn't even know if my daughter Rachalea was safe. And I said to Debbie, after I saw the video about Shani Louk came out on Telegram within hours of the murder. I said to Debbie, I'm going to track her parents down. And I found them through the chief IDF spokesperson, Jonathan Conricus, who personally briefed you on the phone. He got me their number. I called you and I asked you if we could dedicate the Torah to Shani. And we added Shani Louk dancing, as you said, on the front of the Torah. And Bobby, you missed your calling being a preacher because the verses you quoted that King David danced in front of Michal, his wife, and the Hebrew is mecharker b'chol oz. He danced with every ounce of his strength. And then his wife said to him, oh, how beautiful that the king of Israel disgraced himself today as he danced like a simpleton. And then he turned to her, as you said so eloquently, said, and I will humiliate myself even before the maidservants and before God, I will be great. And I always get goosebumps when I hear that verse. So thank you, Bobby. And that's Shani Louk dancing on the front. So Ricky, now will you do the letter? Thank you. Someone. Dana, you want to hold it? Thank you. We have to have the U.S. military, and especially after losing 3 soldiers yesterday, Dana. Nissim. Debbie. My wife, Debbie, was an incredible daughter-in-law to my mother. My mother loved her very much. And from the first time she met her, she called her mom, which meant a lot to me. And
Debbie was a very good daughter-in-law. You were a very good daughter-in-law.
Tom Weiss, he lost his mother 30 days ago. Come quick. Bobby Tom Weiss's father was the congressman for this district. He died in office and he was succeeded by the current congressman. What's our congressman's name again? I try to forget him. No, your father was Ted Weiss. Jerry Nadler, I try to forget. I introduced him to Bobby, he wasn't very nice, so I try to forget him. So, I already know him. Yeah, you fought him over the Hudson, right? So Nadler was his father's aide, so he became congressman automatically when his father, and his mother died 30 days ago. What? Okay. Now, Bobby, if you can sit down, we're going to do a few letters. I want to do a letter for. Okay, can we film this? I want you to film this. I want you to film this. How many do we have? Okay. I want to do a letter for President John Fitzgerald Kennedy, the 60th anniversary of whose murder was 2 months ago. I want to do a letter for Joseph Kennedy Jr., who died fighting the Nazis. Bobby, that was 1944. I'd like to do a letter for your aunt Kick. Do the next one. One, you'll help me now. Your brother. Your brother's name was? David. Your second brother was Michael, I remember, yeah. Your grandmother was the mother of 9 children, all of whom contribute so outstandingly to the United States. We'll do one for Rose Kennedy. You have to help me now. I'd like to do more family members. I was going to save that for the second to last letter. Yes. Now I'd like to do it for your father, because that's the last letter of Kol, the Lamed, right? Okay. The Lamed. So your father's getting the last letter of the second to last word. Okay. And I'm going to sit down for that. Thank you, Bobby. Wait, hang on. Now for the last 5 letters, I want to do one for my father, Yoav Boteach, the Yud. The Shin for my grandfather, Ezra. The Reish for my grandmother, my mother's mother, Chaya Bluma. The Aleph for where's Sarla? For Papa, for my grandfather, Ephraim. Can I help you do the last one? And this is the very last letter. This is for my mother, who was an extraordinary woman. Esther Elka Bas Ephraim, Esther Elka Bas Chaya Bluma. Mommy, I love you. Mommy, I miss you. Mommy, thank you for everything you did for Sarla, for Bar Kochva, for Chamoshi, for Teret, for me, for Debbie, for our 9 children, for our 10 grandchildren, thank God, for your 27 grandchildren. Mommy, I think about you every single day. You inspire everything about me, and I have had the hardest year. And Sarla and I and Debbie, we were in the room when my mother took her last breath. And I never knew that life can have pain like that. And I can only redeem that pain by consecrating a Torah to my mother. And the act of desecration that was done to Shani Louk, I called up Ricky, and I said to her, I called her and I said, never in history was a woman's body desecrated to that extent in front of so many people. And it can only be remedied through an act of consecration by having a Torah dedicated to her. So this Torah will forever be dedicated, as it says on the back. Liloi Nishmat, in the memory of the soul, Imi Marasi, my mother, my teacher. Asher Gamla Chasedim Zulasa, my mother practiced kindness with every person. My sister Sorla will tell you, My mother loved white people, black people, gay people, straight people, Muslim people. My mother's co-worker, my mother worked at the Ambassador Hotel in the Union Pacific Bank where Bobby's father was murdered on June 5th, 1968. And I always thought of Bobby's father when my mother worked there. And my mother's co-worker was a black woman named Kathy, and my mother's marriage was very bad. And this black woman and her children gave my mother comfort. And from the earliest age, a Jewish family and a black family got to know each other. But my mother worked where your father was killed. And it's all coming together tonight. She invited guests always, and she treated everyone like they had infinite value. Ha'isha Chashuva, the woman who had great value and worth, Esther Elka, named after Queen Esther and Elka, the daughter of Ephraim and Chaya Bluma. She died today, the 19th day of Shvat on the Jewish calendar, in the year 2023. Dedicated by her son, Rabbi Jacob Shmuel Boteach, Rabbi Shmuley Boteach. Secondly, to the Neshama, Mefaked Mered Ghetto Warsaw, the commander-in-chief of the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising, who died at 23 years old, Mordechai Yelevich. May God avenge him. His name was the son of Avram and Cyril. Nirtzach, he died at 23 years old in the year 1943 on May 8th. And finally, in the memory of Shani Louk, Shani Louk, Hashem Yikom Dama. These are the words that are put behind the martyr of only someone who's killed for being Jewish ever gets that, Hashem Yikom Dama. And God willing, when her body is retrieved from Gaza, that will be on her grave. Hashem Yikom Dama. Bat Nissim, she was the daughter of Nissim and Rivka and Ricky. Avdat Hashem, she served God b'muzika v'rikudim, with music and with dance always, as you said so eloquently, Bobby. Nirtzacha b'achzariot, she was murdered with savagery. Ayidei Machable Hamas, through the Hamas terrorists. And she died on the happiest day of the Jewish calendar, the day of joy and the day of celebration, the happiest day of the Jewish calendar, Simchas Torah, Tavshin Pei Dalet, Simchas Torah, in the year 2023. And now we're going to complete the very last letter. Everybody please come in.
I've been through. Ask me where I'm from, and I will tell you I'm a Jew, and every Jew's a proud Jew. Not just me, my sisters and my brothers. Never be ashamed to be a proud Jew. It's not what you've done, it's how he made you. So sing the song and spread the pride around you. Yehudi ani, eternally. Hey Abraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, v'nei Sarah Rivka, Rachel v'Leah. Hey Abraham, Yitzchak v'Yaakov, v'nei Sarah Rivka, Rachel v'Leah. Ivri anoichi v'yes Hashem, elikei hashamayim ani yoreh. 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 Ivri anoichi v'yes Hashem, elokei 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 hashamayim ani yoreh. I'm a Jew and I'm proud and I sing it out loud, 'cause forever and ever that's what I'll be. I'm a Jew and I'm proud, and without a doubt Hashem is always watching over me. Ivri anoichi v'yes Hashem, elokei hashamayim ani yoreh. 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 Ivri anoichi v'yes Hashem, hashamayim ani yoreh. Ivri anoichi v'yes Hashem, elokei hashamayim ani yoreh.
Where's the sofa? Where's the sofa?
Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simen Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simen Tov, Mazel Tov, Mazel Tov, Simen Tov, Yeheilonu.
Simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, Yeheilonu, 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 Ulachol Yisrael, Yeheilonu, Yeheilonu, Ulachol Yisrael, Yeheilonu, Yeheilonu, Ulachol Yisrael, Yeheilonu, Yeheilonu, Ulachol Yisrael. Mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, Yeheilonu. Simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, Yeheilonu, 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 Ulachol Yisrael, Yeheilonu, Yeheilonu, Ulachol Yisrael, Yeheilonu, Yeheilonu, Ulachol Yisrael, Yeheilonu, Yeheilonu, Ulachol Yisrael. Mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, Yeheilonu. Simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, mazel tov, simmen tov, Yeheilonu.